You want to fight crime? Let's get dangerous.
And yes, it is that time once again for us to say hello. Yeah, it's time for another episode of From the Desk of a Small Press Publisher. And this week almost didn't happen, but I will explain to you why. And I explained to you the topic of the night here, to boldly go where other comic creators have gone. That's a hard thing to do, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, before we do anything else, we got to do our normal bit here with our favorite Kool-Aid woman coming out the wall saying that, Stupid O'Clock still happens 1 hour into our show here. If you are a fan of Stupid O'Clock, that happens at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is followed up by Last Man Standing at 1. Then you get a respite until Monday, until you have Nicholas Tucker and Never Mind a Furthermore at 10 a.m. And then, yes, there is another Comic Book Spectrum this upcoming Thursday here. I am not certain what the topic is going to be for most of this month. Last month, we was talking about a lot of the stuff from the past as far as PBS was concerned. So we talked about things such as Spidey Super Stories, The Electric Company, MathNet for Square One, the Bloodhound Gang from 321 Contact, and 321 Contact itself here. So it's a lot of fun talking about comics, geek culture, and everything, and reflecting of things of the past too. So it's kind of a great show in that aspect. And on that note, I know what you guys here for. And yeah, it's that time once again. And you guys know what time it is. Even though it might be a handful, but it's still time for new comic book pickups for the week. And yes, there are new comic books here. And I'm glad I didn't take the 2 or 3 that did came in, because it got picked up by another 5. So we got total 8 books here that makes the show for this week here. We're going to start with this is issue 1 right here of the official index to the Doom Patrol. I do have this here, but I got a better copies of both issue 1 and issue 2 of the official index here. So that's great and cool and everything. That's definitely going back to everything here. And it looks like we got the Parallax Clan here, and they're saying a friend just came in and sat on my lap. Okay, cool. So you got everybody sitting there watching here. That's a great sign here. And thank you guys for watching here. So we got issue number 2 of the official index here. That is followed up by the kitchen sink version of the comic version of issue number 3 of The Spirit. Yes, Will Eisner's The Spirit number 3 from Kitchen Sink here. I believe these are still reprints of the original one. And then I got another copy of issue 54 of Marvel 2-in-1s here. And people up here is like, well, why are you getting multiple copies of issue number 54? We'll talk about that in a moment here in our next section here. We got Prudence and Caution number 2. So now I actually have the full run of Prudence and Caution here. So there was only 2 issues that's ever made here. And for those who don't know, I will talk about the story maybe another time here about my encounter with a certain master creator, as I call him, but other people know him as Chris Claremont. So, yes, Chris Claremont actually was a force to that led to the creation of Prudence and Caution. But that's a story for another time here. And we're getting closer and closer to completing our Dazzler run. So we have Dazzler number 34 and 37. So I think we're down to like 3 missing issues here. And then we got this embossed Foley goodness of Ultimate New Ultimates 1. That was a giveaway win that I had here. And that is new comic book pickups for the week here. Now, on that note, since we did new comic book pickups for the week, like I said before, we're going to try to start some new stuff here. This is going to lead us to the comic highlight of the week here. And it goes back to what I was saying about here. Why am I buying multiple copies of Marvel 2-in-1 number 54? Is it a highly speculated book? Hell no. However, it's like Beanie says, love shinies. She would love that if she was here. Yeah, if she was here. Yep. But is this a highly speculated book here? No. Is it a first appearance? Yes. It's the first appearance of what will eventually be known as the Grapplers. And for those who don't know, we're talking about the original Grapplers before Thing has its own comic series here. We're talking about the original 4 that Auntie Freeze managed for the Roxxon Corporation here. So we had the original Titania, which is completely separate from the Titania that was in She-Hulk here. And this is one of the things that really got, if they say it really grinds your gears here, that was one of the things here. It's like, oh, Titania made her first appearance in this book here. Wrong. The Titania that most people love and know made her first appearance in Secret Wars 1. Davida Devoto, who was the first Titania, made her debut here. She made her debut along with Pound Cakes and Letha and another character by the name of Screaming Mimi. Now, I want you to remember Screaming Mimi for a reason, because Screaming Mimi eventually became Songbird for the Thunderbolts. So yes, this was her first appearance. So if you're a fan of Songbird from the Thunderbolts, you want to pick this up because that was her first appearance in this book here. So Letha, Pound Cakes, Titania, and Screaming Mimi, the original Grapplers, with a cameo appearance of Auntie Freeze, was in this book. It's not highly speculated on, but a lot of people mark up this book because, again, this is supposed to be the first appearance of Titania, and that's not accurate. It's the first appearance of Davida Devoto, the very first Titania 1, who eventually died later on in the Thing series. Mary McPherson takes over the name of Titania in Secret Wars, in the first Secret Wars and everything. So that's the key thing here. And if you don't, then trust me, if I was wrong, my chat would tell me. I'm not. Nowhere close to being wrong in that. But, I always try to find books like these as cheaply as possible because a lot of people are trying to charge an arm and a leg. We're talking about upwards of $40 for this issue here. Now, this one is a direct one here. I know that people are, have their qualms about newsstand issues and everything to that magnitude. Newsstands might, be slightly marked up. I think I ended up getting this for like less than 10. But the main thing here is don't be fooled. Because a lot of times they're going to tell you, this is the first appearance of Titania. It's like, no, that's a different Titania. Completely different. If you want the first Mary McPherson, aka the Titania that we know and love from the She-Hulk series, you have to get You have to get the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars 1, the original Secret Wars. That's where she makes her first appearance here. She did trying to think which issue did Doom give her powers here, because she made her first appearance as Mary McPherson when Doom gave her and Volcana their powers. Is when they became known as Volcana and Titania. So it's really weird in that aspect here that people don't have their knowledge and their history correct here. And that's the reason why it is the highlight of the week here, because I know for a fact that people will go goo goo gaga over this issue for the wrong reasons here. If you want to go goo goo gaga for a character that is known in the current Marvel universe, it would be over Screaming Mimi for the fact that that's Songbird from Thunderbolts. Matter of fact, I don't think Thunderbolts is still running as an ongoing series now either. So, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but that's pretty much what it is here. So, and that's the comic book highlight for this week here. Like I said, I'm going to try to have newer additions to the show here, just to kind of highlight some different things that most people may not talk about or want to talk about, or don't want to be corrected on, but yet it's quite needed now. But I am going to tell you one thing that has kind of blessed my heart a bit here. There it is, Secret Wars number 3, when Doom gave Titania and Volcana their powers. So if you want the origin of how Mary McPherson got her powers, Secret Wars issue 3. There it is. So what kind of make me happy this week as I browse the interwebs here. Havens for Heroes are now doing like all these different shorts about comic books that people crap on, that says it's not worth much, but it's a good read. And then I was like, I'm up here, it's like the first couple of books that he did, I was like, yeah, I don't think people crap on it. It's just that there was just no love ever given to those books because they never never reached the height of popularity over the books that they were in competition with. So he was talking about an issue of John Sable Freelance and a few others over a couple of shorts here. And I was like, you know what? I'm glad that other people are trying to come out with more positive content to say, hey, you guys might want to check this book out. I know not a lot of people may have read it, but it's something that you might end up liking here. It's outside of the norm. I wouldn't call them, books that people call trash or anything like that, but it's just, books that have no value. It's like every book has its value. It depends on the reader of the book here. But at the same time, showing some love for things that are not what I consider commonplace type books here. I mean, I could go, and grab like for example, Prudence and Caution would be one of them. Not a lot of people would have known about that series, let alone have both issues of Prudence and Caution and all this other nice stuff here. Things like Lady Supreme. Not a lot of people know about that book. And also True Story. I asked, and I had an opportunity to talk to Terry Moore, and Terry Moore doesn't even remember that he ever wrote that series. So, that kind of hurt my heart. But at the same time, it's just one of those things that it is what it is when you bring positivity to books that may not have the proper shine put on it in a lot of cases here. And, you never know. Maybe the books that I create may get that spotlight every once in a while. And that's the real reason why I have the title the way that it is, to boldly go where other comic book creators have gone. Because it's one of those things to create a series, but it's another thing to really get the word out there, to actually have people really read your work and like your work and love your work and talk about your work. And not in the standpoint of like being that one hit wonder or that one issue wonder or the flavor of the month. And then after that flavor of the month is gone away, everybody flocks to something else and it's a struggle. you want people to really, be that guiding force to be like, hey, I'm really looking forward to that next issue, and to keep that encouragement going, to be like, keep plugging, keep chugging, keep going, keep that creativity going, keep that, momentum full steam going, because it's one thing to be writing for yourself, but it's also a difference when you're really writing a story that other people love. And because other people love it, you will put that extra love behind it. You won't go formulaic. You won't go, or even worse, you won't be selfish. Because when you get to that selfishness aspect of it, it's no longer becomes something that you want to share with people. It's more along the lines of, I'm doing this for me. And if you don't like where I'm going with it, tough cookies. I don't want to get to that point. I want it to be more along the lines like, it's going a certain direction here. I want people to love what's going on, but at the same time, be that, I want more. And if, because you want more, it's like, let me go ahead and give you more. This is where, I already know, with at least with Amazonia, where the beginning is and where the end is at. It's an ongoing series, but I already know what the end is. So having that ending and keeping that ending to yourself, and knowing for a fact, beyond a shadow of doubt, that you got people along for the ride, makes it that much more interesting, because I don't have to always go from point A to point Z. I could go any direction to get to that final destination here. So when you get it to the point where you become selfish, you just worry about just getting from point A to point B. You just don't care what, what other people think here. In this case, I really want to here. And, getting back to the whole thing about accountability here. Yes, I haven't started on issue number 8, but I did start on issue number 6 here. So let me try to get this in focus here. So yeah, I have started on it. And for those who are wondering, what's up with the post-it notes? That's the parts of the outline and everything that I don't want people to see just as yet, because why? It gives away certain stuff here. But I already figured out the match cards. I already figure out who wins, who loses, how they win, how they lose, stuff to that magnitude. And lo and behold, what I was working on before the show actually started, because I kind of felt a tad bit, not a whole bunch, but a tad bit guilty. Because again, the last couple of weeks have been messed up, and then we had another, sadly to say, mishap computer wise. And when I say mishap, it was really one of those things where, if I wasn't tech savvy, or, well, like I said, my 9-to-5 job, I do tech support. If I didn't have that type of a background, I wouldn't be live tonight, because I wouldn't have a laptop to broadcast from. Yeah, Windows, this whole Windows 11 thing has been wreaking havoc here. And fortunately for me, the last time that this happened, I ended up buying another solid state drive for this laptop that I'm using here. And now I finally popped that in, because the other one, it didn't die. But something happened with its boot record and such. And now the partitioning and everything is just kaput. So long story short, was able to put everything on this new internal hard drive and everything, and keep plugging and chugging here. So I know I showed you guys the panels, but this is what ended up happening over today here. So we finally got actual formatted pages now. So now you get to see the panels in its actual page form, and that's supposed to be page 4. We're now actually seeing like the fruits of the labor here. We got four of the 50 plus pages done, and we're probably going to do somewhere between 50 to like 50 to like, no, well, actually, it should be like 52 to 56 pages for this issue. Yes, Primetime Saturday Night is a big book. It's usually somewhere about 50 to 56 pages. It always have to be divisible by 4. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's like divisible by 4 would be 52. But if I do 50, it would normally be like 2 pages of ads somewhere. But if I do 52 to 56, that's normally the interior full story of the books and everything to that magnitude. So we're 4 pages now officially into that here. I'm still working on Legends of the Giantess Slayer. We're working on issue 3 now. I'm trying to finish up Legends 103, which is the third lecture from the college level course series here. And that one is going to talk about a different aspect of well, actually, I'm not going to show you up close the notes here. Let me do this here. But yeah, I made actual notes for that particular series here. Hopefully it didn't come all that clear, but we're looking into certain aspects of different fetishes and everything as it applies to the content of the actual anthology here. So that's going to get into some hilarity and some hijinks here, because why? The 2 professors are normally into that type of level of hijinks on the adult level here. But we also have other stories that went along here. I'm happy to announce that I did finish the prequel story from La Carnival de Giganta Femme. So that means that the actual beginning of the series is soon to come here. And if people like the different little snippets of the actual story arcs that I'm working on, this actual bipart, so it's like, I shouldn't say biparts, but everything is broken down usually into 6-page or 8-page chapters within bigger stories here. And you never know. It's like I might have a hit within one of those storylines where people might like it enough to be like, that should be its own series. So that's what we're trying to gear Legends of the Giantess Slayer as a whole here. And like I said, it's the first foray into more adult comics in that aspect here. But we still doing our Primetime Saturday Night. I still need to get back to doing AWF number 5, where we could still do the behind the scenes stuff there. And Amazonia 8 is still coming forth here as a whole, one way or the other. But I just have to take time to get rid of all the stuff here. I finally, and there's no more real excuse here, because why? I got my drafting tape now. So yes, I got my supplies. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I just have to make the time to be like, move all the stuff that off of this desk that I've been using for stuff for like whatnot sales and other type of displays and everything. Wipe it off the table and keep going here. So everybody's saying yay, or at least one person is saying yay. But we're getting ready to be ready for 2026. So far, like I said, 2026 is looking good, because I'm just going to go ahead and roll with at least issue 1, maybe issue 2 of Legends of the Giantess Slayer, since they're already ready. We're in the process of having issue 6 of Primetime Saturday Night. I need to get issue 8 out for Amazonia. And if I don't get bogged down with other family stuff trying to do that, I might even go ahead and do the issue 5 of AWF, which has been a long time coming, which might actually spark interest again in that series too. So that's the cool thing about it here. And, like I stated before, it comes back to the topic. I need to boldly go where other comic book creators have gone. Not a lot of comic book creators would do 4 different titles all at the same time, let alone do what I have done. It's like, if they do multiple titles, they already have one here, and one there. I have 7 in Amazonia, 4 in AWF already done and ready. 5 about to be 6 in primetime Saturday night, and already 2 going on 3 for Legends of the Giant Slayer. So I've been putting the work in. I just don't have the distribution. Everything is really through my website and everything. And another good blessing that came out today is that while I was there at my storage area, a guy that was like a couple of storage areas down, he's a comic book fan. I finally gave him copies of Amazonia 1 through 6 here. And no, I did not give him issue 7 because I didn't have real access to getting that all the way to where I have issue 7 in storage. So he got the beginnings of the series there. Yeah. Joe is making his 10 hands old year a good one. I'm trying to. I gotta try to. It's like between now and next August, we just gotta try to do something that's different. Which, matter of fact, I still gotta pay for C2E2 next year. I already got my invoice and everything to pay, to pay for it. So yeah, I'll be there for C2E2 next year. If everything works out right, I need, really bigger financial booms here. And because of the economy and all this other stuff, I would like to go back to where you're at. New York was good to me, at least with Amazonia. I would have never thought I was, sell out of Amazonia, not having, not thinking that thinking I had enough for the whole weekend. And it turns out I didn't. And that was a kind of like a good thing here. I wish 50 revolutions around this earth is one thing. No, 50 revolutions around the sun is one thing, but it is what it is. But saying all that to say, it's like the best is yet to come here, because I still I still think about some of the things that about history. And when I say about history, it's like I believe that Jack Kirby had success with Fantastic Four around the age of 47. Now you have to be mindful. He was doing books and drawings before Fantastic Four, but he didn't make it big into the industry until he hit the age of 47. A lot of people really didn't become big names until later on in their career, when they were around like their 40s and 50s here. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen shortly after I retire from my 9 to 5 and do this full time here. But it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things that, like I say, you have to boldly go to where you need to be. And I probably have to get out of the whole aspect of imposter syndrome and feeling like I don't belong with some of the bigger names, and especially in this modern era. I feel that it's like, what, I'm just as good as they are. It's just the only difference is they get to work with brands that are well known. I get to create my own stuff. I get to work and be as creative as I want. Do I have people telling me no? Yes, I do. Luckily I have an editor that would tell me no, or something that was stupid. I have other, you know, colorists and inkers and stuff like that. I'd be like, that doesn't look right, or that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't work. Having that sounding board to bounce things off of goes a long way here. And then, like I said, I have worked with a couple of other big names that have done like guest covers and stuff for me as well. So it's not like I haven't put in my dues or anything here. Not like I haven't really anything beyond, just the stuff that I have done. I have, done guest spots on other people's books too. But I just don't really talk about it because it's not one of those things to like to being braggadocious about. It's just one of those things like it was work. It was work. I was happy to do it. And in most cases, it was pro bono. If it helped me make a name for myself, it helped me make a name for myself. But you just don't do, you just don't do stuff just to be, just be like, oh, I need to make something from it. It's like a lot of things in life. If you want to mature and grow in it, you're going to learn the process and be patient. Yeah, Kirby turned 45 a week before Fantastic Four 1. Yeah. So you have to think about that. It's like, not too many younger people get into this industry and become like an industry name. When you truly think about people like Liefeld, was like a one in a million type happening here. Age 16, you working for Marvel Comics and you making your name for yourself here. Most of the people that were big names in the industry before then really didn't hit their stride until they was like going into like their 40s and 50s. Yeah, not it's like not everyone gets their big break at 14 like Jim Shooter. Yeah, Jim Shooter is another one. But also, when I think about people like Jim Shooter, it's like he had the proper appreciation for it. Nothing was given to him. He was not crowned, the way that comics should go, like Liefeld did at 16. It's when you truly think about it, Jim Shooter wasn't a millionaire like Liefeld. By the time Shooter reached 16, he had a career. He was making some good money, but he wasn't a millionaire. Liefeld became one of the few millionaires by the time he turned 18, he was a millionaire. By the time Shooter was 18, he was just, really truly getting submitted into the industry and moving up from just being one of those people who wrote to editing. He was making that transition. He was still doing the work, but he was, getting the feedback and everything, and really getting his, going into the deep end of the pool to be in this industry for a long period of time. By the time he was like 18, 19, 20, by the time Liefeld was 18, he was already a millionaire. He could probably take it or leave it. 90s was a weird decade when it comes to creators and creations and everything to that magnitude here. So, I'm not talking bad about Liefeld. I'm just, kind of stating just general facts here. I'm not saying that, he wasn't worth the millions or anything like that. No, by no means, not that. But when you look at Shooter versus him and what Shooter brought to the table and what Liefeld brought to the table, I have more appreciation for Jim Shooter than Liefeld. I still feel that Liefeld has more that he could have offered, but he was never truly groomed because of the simple fact that 90s changed the way comics were done. Now, some of you out there in the audience are going to probably disagree with me and be like, no, you're wrong about that. Liefeld this, Liefeld that. It's like, I'm not talking bad about him. But the 90s brought a change in how people looked at comics. And that change was more along the lines that people got more, how can I say, enticed by the higher level of pinup work than actual storytelling through the art. People got more enthralled with the detail of one single panel or the pinup itself, as opposed to what was being put on the whole entire page to tell a story. Yeah, Jim rolled up his sleeves and worked. Yeah, I agree. Liefeld is a blowhard who is lazy as hell. I would not say that. Those are your words, but I could see that here. But again, when you have a person of Liefeld's character, at the age of 16, the one of the top companies is really putting you on the map and paying you big dollars to do it. The hype train came before he was really ready to accept it. And you know what that happens. Well, like you said, with Jim Shooter, he had to roll up his sleeves. It wasn't, he was not really ordained in, the next coming of any type of movement in comics here. He rolled up his sleeves, he worked, and he gained he gained what he gained here. And why shouldn't he be? All the dude bros love him. He was a multimillionaire because of Deadpool, whom all other artists and writers made famous for him. Mm-hmm. The Deadpool, well, I would say this. He created the Deadpool design, the Cable design, and a few others. Other writers made those characters what they are. Other writers did that for what he designed. Not to say that he didn't do yeoman's work. It was more along the lines you had a good design and everything. People loved the artwork behind those designs, and the right writers came along and made those characters work. Unfortunately, before he was able to learn the craft of writing on that level, he left to form Image. Now, whether or not that was a good thing or not, only history would tell. Not my place to say one way or the other, because I know how his fans are. I know how I feel about a lot of 90s comics. But at the same time, he was one of the forefathers of the movement. Do I dislike him for it? No, because it was kind of bound to happen. It was kind of bound to happen because, again, the power struggle over there in the big two during that time really spoke volumes. Not a lot of people were really free to create the way that they wanted to create here. But also at the same time, when I think about those who left to form Image and look at where they are at right now, out of the original 7, I would say four really had made a great choice to do what they did and tried their best to make something out of it, and the remnants of their company is still surviving because of that. Surprisingly enough, I would say McFarlane came out smelling like a rose here. Jim Lee came out smelling like a rose. Silvestri came out smelling like a rose here. And I forgot who the fourth one was that was on my mind here. But Liefeld wasn't. I still feel that Liefeld could have done more. I mean, think about it. Jim Lee went on to be the head man at DC for a period of time here. We all know what Todd McFarlane did and what he's still doing now. Silvestri has gone on and done other projects and still have the same type of name that he had before, even before he left Marvel. When you have the talent, you have the talent. And that's the key thing here. It's not to say that your talent is not as good. It's more along the lines of, did you do the right thing for where you was at during that time? I feel that Liefeld didn't. Now, mind you, if you really follow the history, he was a very impressionable person. And he kind of followed after McFarlane. And then they had a falling out. And then they got back together. And then they had another falling out. It's just one of those things that, at his age and where he was at, and, being young and having money, it's kind of like one of those things here. Maybe you didn't learn the lessons that you should have, but at the same time, you wasn't going to be hurting either. But history would show that eventually Image had to do that overhaul. And once Image did that overhaul, now you're getting series such as like, Invincible and Walking Dead and Saga and Sex Criminals and all of those books being published. Image is technically the third, one of the third biggest publishers out there. So, they did change the landscape. It's no longer a big two, it's a big three now. At one time, it was about to get ready to be a big four because of Boom Studios. But we saw what happened there. But that's looking at history. That's just looking at history. That's looking at things as a bigger, broader perspective here. But as a creator, you should step boldly. Whether if it is getting your big break at a Marvel or a DC or an Image or some other company, or doing what I'm doing with the grassroots and producing the books and, seeing what you can do here as far as keeping those books going and everything, and as much as I don't knock them, I don't knock them at all. I don't knock people who do Kickstarter campaigns and everything. And Kickstarter has done a lot for a lot of creators out there. And they have audiences that look for their book on that platform. But when you start these projects and you don't have an audience that's there, it makes it hard to get some type of distribution. And then, to be quite honest here, there was a lot of complaints about people not making the amount of money that they wish that they could make on each and every campaign beyond their, first 2 or 3 issues. And I look at that and I sit back, I look at what's going on and everything. It's like, it really comes down to your audience. It really comes down to what you're really putting out there. If your product is really that good, the whole goal of Kickstarter is just to launch it there and be able to build from there. But if you're constantly going to Kickstarter over and over and over again for each and every issue, you have to ask yourself, are you really growing? Or are you just trying to really just bankroll money just to put out something that may be not sustainable? And like I said, I'm not picking on Kickstarter campaigns. No, far from that. It's just more along the lines of looking at what it takes to be bold enough to follow in other creators' footsteps to get to where they were at. I mean, it takes a lot of love and dedication to make a hit comic book and make it work, especially in today's market, where the majority of the people in the world are not, I wouldn't say world, but at least in the United States, are not readers. A lot of people don't read comics now. A lot of people are, on the internet or streaming or watching TV and everything. And then now you got a steady wave of people coming in trying to make a comic book as a proof of concept to go over to television. And, to a certain degree, people are up here trying to say that to make us real comic book creators. And I put real in quotation marks because there's no such thing one way or the other. But they try to say that to try to make us angry enough to be against people like that. I'm up here more along the lines. The proof is going to be in the pudding. If you create a great series, you create great characters, you got great stories, it's going to stand the test of time. It's going to stand on its own. You don't have to worry about, oh, it was done for, to try to get a pilot up and going. Who cares? Who cares at that point? If that's not your goal, to get, some type of screenplay or to have a project, greenlit to be something else, write your story and tell it. You don't have to always hope that it get picked up for option. It will be nice, but it's not, that should be furthest away from your mind. You just want to tell a great story. You want to illustrate it the best way possible, and just hope that you can hit an audience to keep it going for as long as you can. At least that was my goal. And I'm still going to stick to my goal as far as, distribution beyond the company website here. It's not until I have at least a year's worth of books. And when I say a year's worth of books, we're talking about at least 12 to 15 issues of a title before I approach a diamond or a lunar or something to that magnitude. Why? Because now it's not the fact that you have a year, you're ahead of yourself. That gives you almost 24 months to come up with that next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 issues. And if you hit the ground running like that, it gives you some leeway, whether it be you run into problems with labor, with getting the right artists and writers together. If you're running short of money, it gives you time to actually get the finances in order without having to worry about the distributor not having books in hand for comic book stores to buy. It's rather smart in the long run, but there's also other opportunities too here, such as I don't have to wait for a distributor. If I really wanted to, I could contact independent creator type comic book stores directly with my sales pitch and give them a good deal to buy directly from me to have their books in the store. But if I go that route, that means that now I have to take time from doing the actual 3D rendering for Primetime Saturday Night and from Legends of the Giant to Slayer. It takes time away from me writing scripts for AWF and Primetime Saturday Night and Amazonia. It takes time away from me from drawing AWF and Amazonia to make phone calls to say, hey, I'm Joe McPhee. I'm a creator over here. I have been to, these, comic book conventions and everything. We have been publishing for X amount of years here. We have over these type of issues across 4 different titles. We hear that you're into supporting, independent created comics or creator-owned comics here. Let me tell you about what we have here. Let me send you, our pitch here with actual samples and everything, and a price breakdown of what it would cost it cost you if you carried our books, if you bought directly from us and carried our books. That takes time. That takes effort. I have actually done these pitches before. That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It's one of those things that if you're not prepared for it, you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to have to understand that even though you might have a $5 price tag on the actual book itself, if you're going to go directly to the stores, you might have to sell for maybe 10 cents above printing cost. That's not a knock on their ego. That's going to be more along the lines like, well, I got to make certain that I sell X many of these books to comic book stores to make the profit that I would like to have. And that's the whole thing about distribution here. Because if I went the distributor route, now they're going to take maybe like 20 to 30% off the top here, and then whatever other costs that I have to may have to eat as a whole here, let alone getting purchase orders for anywhere between 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 books a month. That's a lot of money to shell out for a print, I wouldn't say a print run, but for how many ever books that they need for that month. And that does not include whatever else that we have in storage. So it's a lot of stuff that goes into play here. It's just one of those things that you really have to sit back and really truly think about what is truly needed to reach where everybody else has reached. And it comes back down to that major question from where I went to my very first San Diego Comic-Con. It wasn't the fact that you got a comic book. Everybody got a comic book there. The first question that normally comes out their mouth is like, oh, who's distributing you? And a lot of times it's like, I was like, why is this coming? And why is that coming out more so than anything else? Because again, they want to know how serious you are. So when I told them, it's like, no, I'm not distributed by Diamond or anything like that, but Comixology has it. It's like, oh, then let me tell you about this, and this, because comics and that I think was my saving grace. If I wasn't being sold on Comixology, half of the people, half of the creators would have not taken me seriously. And it's sad, but it's true. You have to really, when you make these books, you have to be serious. If you sell them out of your back of the car and all this other stuff, and you go to a San Diego or New York and you get around some of the bigger people and you tell them that, they don't see you as serious. It's not until you make that next step into like a Diamond or to a Comixology or to some other major distributor, then they would look at you as like, okay, you have some worth. Come on in here. This is why you have to be bold. You have to, get all your ducks in a row. You have to make certain that your product is good. And when I say your product is good, I'm not saying, oh, it looks like everything, all the other books and all this other stuff here. You have to make certain that you're telling a good story. You have to make certain that everything lines up to whatever is the current standard for books. Anybody can make a comic book. Anybody could have a decent story. But does it hit the same way that even the worst thing that could come out of Marvel, or the worst thing that could come out of DC, or the worst thing that could come out of Boom, or the worst thing that could come out of Image, or the worst thing that comes out of a publisher that has distribution? If it reaches that level or above, they'd be like, you have a seat at the table here. Ever since that day, I had certain things like voting rights for Eisner Awards and stuff to that magnitude as a publisher. Granted, it's no longer sent to me here, and sometimes I have to, do the effort to fill out the paperwork and everything and such here. One of the reasons why, like I said, Parallax was like, Oh, how come you know didn't fill out your professional paperwork for New York? It's like because normally for New York I normally would exhibit there, but for San Diego I can't exhibit there yet because I don't do the California track as far as exhibits. And what people now, I know people out there is like, what do you mean by the California tract here? In order to really be considered and move up the listing for a spot at San Diego, you have to do certain things like Ape and WonderCon and other California based Comic Cons that falls up under the banner of Comic Con International. Once you have done those other shows so many times, then you know kind of work your way up the chain to be able to have a booth at San Diego. Unless you just like one of those, you know, we have to have you because you're that hot name in the industry right then and right there. Your likelihood of getting a booth would be more along the lines like, hey, we're just going to put you on a wait list and you just hope and pray that after year 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 that your name eventually goes up on the list to be like, oh yeah, we saw that you've been waiting for a few years and we had a lot of people back out here. San Diego Comic Con is really so big that they really don't have an artist alley anymore. A lot of the more professional artists are now, you know, for them to get in, they buy actual booths and share booths with one another. Artist Alley is probably gotten down to maybe like 6 rows of tables. And you could be in and out of Artist Alley at San Diego like that. I can't say that for New York. But then again, when I was at the last time I was in New York in 2016, I really couldn't leave my booth because I was the only one there, and the only other person that was with me wasn't feeling well, and they barely was coming back and forth here. So it is what it is here. So that's why you have to always be bold. They always say fortune favored the bold. So if you're planning to come out here to do a book, be ready to do your due diligence. Be ready. Have your stuff in a, you know, have your ducks lined up. Have everything in order. The reason being is because when you step out to that first convention, that first show, that first time that you have to represent yourself as a publisher or as a creator or as an artist, and your fellow creator comes up to you and asks you questions like, who distributing you here? You know, how often do you know the general public get a chance at your books here? Where's your print runs schedule look like? Stuff to that magnitude. If you don't know or seem like you're at a loss here, they're not going to take you as serious. You're not. And trust me, once they see you as serious, you have a spot at the table. And once you have that spot at the table, the world's your oyster because now you can ask those questions and get those opinions that you will never truly get if they see that you're not serious. Yeah, there's a few big names that I could actually call and be like, hey, what's your opinion on this? And they would give me that 5 to 10 minutes to give me their answer. And I would thank them for it. But I don't, always, hurry up and call them up, each and every day to be like, hey, I'm your best friend type thing. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. There's always a good chance that, you might get to have that conversation and everything. That's why I always feel honored that, Neil Adams, before he passed, took the 20 to 30 minutes after the end of a C2E2 to talk to me about selling at a booth and overcoming certain things at your booth here. He didn't have to. And what I also found really fun, and this is really kind of weird. I wasn't the one that said hello to him. He said hello to me first as a fellow exhibitor. He was one. He was all like he said. He was always one for his fellow creators, whether you think he was paying attention to you or not. He was very observant. So, I do appreciate the time that he spent with me. I do appreciate the time that, Greg Corn has spent with me. That, a lot of creators, Ashley Wood, another one here, and Afua Richardson. And I could go on and on and on and on. But it's not about name dropping. It's about putting in the work. When they see that you are still working, that you're still putting out content, that you're not relying on your first issue for 5 years or 6 years. When they're seeing that you're putting out new issues either every month, every 2 months, every quarter, or every year, they up here, it's like, that guy's going to work. He's a worker. He's trying to put something out there that's worthwhile here. And it also comes back down to what I also said before. I did a whole show about, a lot of people try to get into this stuff to kind of influence the industry. It's like, no, either be a creator and create the books, put out your stories, or be an influencer. Influencer is a job within itself. If you spend your time trying to influence people, we ain't going to have time to do the actual work. I don't come out here to do, from the desk of a small press publisher to influence people, by no means. I do this show mainly because I need people to realize I am doing the work. I am putting my time in the artwork and trying to illustrate stories the best that I can and bringing them the best of everything here. I might not be the best artist and everything around here, but I am putting out my best foot forward each and every time. I'm putting my soul into each and every page that I produce. I'm putting that love into my story just for you to be able to read it and to enjoy it and know that it comes from a place where I enjoy doing this. I love telling certain stories, and I love where certain things are going. And I'm taking you on a ride where I'm not trying to get you to see some other underlying moral issue or something to that magnitude or talk about politics or anything. No, I'm telling you about a story about characters that does not exist, that is enjoyable enough that I know that you would get something out of it in the long run. In that same process, if you buy artwork that I do, the sketch covers that I do, and all the other stuff, that's a bonus. But the reason why I do this show is for you guys to be a fan of me and the work that I do. And in turns, I'm going to become a fan of you because I have to be accountable to you as far as the books and stuff that I produce here. It's always going to be a two-way street. I can't just, and that's another thing. We as creators cannot always take. And when I say take, I'm talking about we just can't create books and just expect people to always pay without being there to thank you, to show you guys some love, to listen to you guys, to understand, hey, I like this character because this character, does this or does that, or it got me past this situation, or you just enjoy how they handle, what they had to accomplish and everything. When people read stories, they get something a little bit different each and every time, and you never know how it may impact them. Us as creators, we need to listen before we could at least have a share in that, in what you see in it. And if you truly enjoy it, yes, we have to give you our ear. Tell us, because we want to keep going with it. We want to keep you guys happy. It comes back down to having, like, for example, having that one comic book that you love all of a sudden get canceled, and you get to that very last issue and you sit back and wonder, it's like, if the right creative team comes along, would I still have the same love for this character or this storyline like I had before? It comes back, I shouldn't say all the time, but it comes back down to, for example, what I was saying about Rainbow Royale's She-Hulk. They should have never stopped the first run of it the way that they did to make it into Sensational She-Hulk, to have a reinvigoration of new people coming into the book. I believe that hurt what was going on with that character and that title, and it drove people away from it because technically it didn't have an ending. It was almost like they wanted to change story arcs instead of just allowing the story arc to change naturally in an ongoing series. They cut it off at, I think it was like issue 12 or 14, and then next thing you know, we have a brand new volume 2 Sensational She-Hulk 1. And the weird thing about it is that it picked up exactly where the last issue of the She-Hulk run left. So what was the whole point other than it was a cash grab by the overall publisher? When people started to say that, Marvel didn't listen. And it makes me wonder if, those who did reach out to Rainbow Royale, if she actually listened. That's the thing as a creator. Sometimes you have to take that criticism from your fans. Sometimes it's not bad. It's not bad to have criticism from fans. It really is not. I learned from my experience from Kelly Sue D. McCormick dealing with Bitch Planet, because she hurt me out. She literally hurt me out, but in the same time, I think she thought I was being critical of the topic that was at hand, where I was more critical about the way the story was being told, where you kind of still leave the reader in the dark about the universe that it was set in. What was the whole scenario that led to the thinking that was going on. And we got into the whole concept of storytelling about, taking a person on for the ride, as opposed to giving them something that they could hang their hat on, for they could understand why certain things is happening the way that it does here. Now, mind you, what she did in this series made the backstories of a lot of characters shine. Penny's backstory, to me, is the ultimate way to tell somebody's backstory. But I don't think that she could have pulled it off if she would have told people how this universe was. If she would have told people how this universe was beforehand, Penny's backstory would not have as much of an impact as it had for the series. Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as reading, Bitch Planet as a whole, Penny was not a, if I could say let me see if I come back here. Yeah, there we go. Penny was not one of those people that I would see as a tragic figure. She was one of those characters that, if you understood what she's been through, you understood what she represents in the world that it was set in. And she was a victim. She was a victim to a lot of, if I could say, biasness. A very big victim. But at the same time, it did not define her. Or she didn't allow it to define her. She didn't allow anybody to change how she defined herself. And that what makes her backstory that powerful. if I would have known what the underlying thing that have changed the whole entire world before reading her backstory, it may have changed my opinion of that character. But because that didn't happen, I enjoyed that character, but I ended up hating another character that came along way later on down the line that used to have actual power in that society to actually do something about it. It made me dislike that character. I didn't have any sympathetic feelings for that character like I had for a lot of the other ones in Bitch Planet. But saying all that to say here is that she actually took the time to talk to me. And when I say talk to me, we talk about via Twitter. And this was back in the day where Twitter was still the Wild West, and people was spouting off at the mouth about how things are bad and this, that, and the other without giving actual concrete evidence here. But I still remember that conversation like tomorrow. Because, my comments wasn't ones that was saying that this stuff was bad or anything like that. I kept saying it kept confusing me because I would read the story and I would like certain aspects of certain characters there, but I never truly understand the motivation. And by the time I got to issue number 3 and read Penny's background, I had to ask the questions like, how did this particular universe get the way that it was? It was a natural question to ask. Now, lo and behold, I never expected her to respond. That's kind of like one of those things that, I guess Dan Slott said it best. Because I bought it and read it, I was a customer. And as a customer, you try your best as a person who is selling you the story and everything to make them happy. Now, in that scenario, I was not expecting her to write back. She did. We had our conversation, and the rest was history. But as a person who was just like, I'm just a nobody, up and coming creator, I was doing reviews and stuff, online, kind of like trying to get my name out there, writing comic book reviews and everything. This is still during the time where I'm trying to find a way to get a better foothold into the industry as far as the writing aspect is concerned, with reading the books and everything to that magnitude, and just happen to, post in a thread that was dealing with Bitch Planet, and that happened. I mean, it's just one of those things here. Just like how, the 1 year I came back to Dan Slott after giving him the first, couple of issues of Amazonia, he remembered exactly what I wrote. It was encouraging to keep on going. It was encouraging out of all the books that I've submitted to Comixology. Comixology said, you got something with Amazonia, keep working on that. As many times I almost gave up on that series because it seemed like nobody really paid attention to it. Those that were in the industry was paying attention. And it said, keep developing it. Keep going with it. Keep going. Keep writing it. Do more. That's why I said you have to boldly go where others have been. Those who have been there could look at something and say, you got something there. Develop it. If you're serious, ask me any question, but keep working on it. When you stop working on it, that's when we know that you're not serious. But as long as you're working on it, you keep producing. We're seeing new issues. We're seeing new stuff coming from you. We'll help. So that's the lesson of the evening, people. Don't come softly, come boldly. If you're going to make that next comic book serial, and yes, it's considered a serial when you go to the copyright office. So that's the reason why I use that terminology. So I'm just getting you guys used to it. But if you're going to do that comic book, you're going to do that comic book series, come strongly, come boldly. Don't be a jerk. Being bold does not equal being a jerk, but come boldly. And when we say boldly, come assured that one way or the other, that you're putting your best foot forward, that you're always, looking forward to that next issue, to producing, I should say, producing that next issue, hook or by crook, and find a way to get it out there where people can get to it. And with the fact of the matter that we got things like Global Comics now, we got Webtoons, we got Newgrounds, we got all these different means to put the stuff out digitally. There's nothing stopping people from going boldly. So, on that note, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about? I know I've been talking you guys' ears off and everything, and it probably was not the topic that you guys want me to talk about here, especially after the fact that I just got through watching the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Yeah. I'm going to keep my mouth shut as far as that is concerned. Right now, I'm hoping that later episodes get better. But I can say this is definitely not the Star Trek for me. Definitely not. Now, I'm hoping that somewhere down the line, they kind of bridge the gap between actual canon and lore from the older series to now. But it's weird. And when I say weird, it's like they almost rewriting a lot of stuff here. And yes, it is a prequel series. Just to give you, I'm not going to give spoilers, but it is a prequel series, and that's the reason why I'm up here saying that. Yeah, it is not for me. And for those who don't know, when I mean prequel series, it is a prequel to the original series. It does not. It did not acknowledge Captain Archer and the First Enterprise. And we all know that the First Enterprise was not NCC 1701. So it does not acknowledge any of Captain Archer's crew, the original warp drive, the original ship that they built that had the warp drive in it or anything to that magnitude. What Strange New Worlds is about is Captain Pike. So they're taking it before the menagerie, somewhere before the menagerie and before the original pilot that was shot for CBS. And let's just say, like, the first thing that came out of my mouth 5 minutes into it was, how is Captain Pike alive? And then that's when it's like it took me a while to get to the point that it is a prequel. What also makes me wonder how much older was Spock by the time we got to Kirk. And then they threw a lot of other things out there that makes me kind of like question a lot of stuff here. Like, for example, we finally get to see Simon, Kirk's dad. and they kind of threw a monkey wrench in that, because now we're up here trying to figure out, is this based upon original series or J.J. Abrams? Because J.J. Abrams was like, yeah, Pike and Simon Kirk were the best of friends, and Pike eventually started to look after James after Simon died. In the original series, Pike and Simon Kirk hated one another. They were bitter rivals. And Pike, because Pike hated his father, he also hated Jim. So it's kind of like one of those things that's like, oh, so now Simon is now on the Enterprise and they serving together. It's like, that didn't not happen. It didn't happen, but it did not happen either. And then this series also started off with something that, like I said, no spoilers, but it alludes to something dealing it. Well, I can't say that because that would be almost spoilerish too. But it starts off pointing out something in history, in Pike's history, that kind of throws people for a loop in the very beginning. But the more that they keep referencing it, is kind of like, oh, that would explain why he kind of sort of went mad in the original series after what happened to him. So it's one of those things here. And we've just seen some characters before. We've seen some characters before they were, main staples here. Such as like Uhura being a cadet. So instead of having Lieutenant Uhura, it's more like she's a cadet now, and her first assignment is NCC 1701 up under Pike. And we all know, Spock is there. But then they did the monkey wrench to say that Simon Kirk is up under Spock instead of the other way around. Again, they're playing loose and fast with Star Trek lore and Star Trek history. So that's why kind of like one of those people is like, yeah, this is not my cup of tea, but at the same time, I'm going to try to get past this. And I know Parallax is sitting there. It's like, you need to stop watching that and watch Picard. And I was like, I don't want to watch Picard because I know how I feel about Picard and his generation and everything. And they're not going to talk about all the stuff in the novels about Picard. Let's just say young Picard was a handful. Young Picard, when he was part of Black Ops, was really a handful. He literally mellowed out once they made him a starship captain. He had to mellow out after some of the stuff that he'd been through, after some of the damage that he took. He had to mellow out. So that's why I don't want to watch Picard, because I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to mention a lot of stuff that was in the novels, especially for like the Next Generation novels about Picard that the TV series did not cover yet. And if they don't cover it right, I'm probably going to be pissed off. But, it is what it is. No, I haven't seen Lower Decks either, but I know Lower Decks is supposed to be a comedy. And to me, Star Trek and comedy just don't fit. And I still haven't seen Discovery. And now that's another one that a lot of people tell me don't watch unless I really want to be pissed off. And I still need to see what we call Star Trek Beyond as far as the movies is concerned. That's the only Star Trek movie that I haven't seen yet. Is Star Trek Beyond for the new crew, from the Chris Pine type crew. But outside of that, what is on your guys' mind? I haven't heard anything. It's like nobody has been talking here. So if everybody is not talkative or got other stuff to do, I could let you guys go here. But like I said, I'm only here for you guys here. We talk about what you want. Discuss those things that you bring to my attention over the week. We already covered the topic, so this is your guys' time. So we give you guys a couple of moments here, and if I don't hear anything within like the next 2 to 3 minutes, we just probably going to call it a day. But outside of that, like I said, I'll probably be setting up all the comic book spectrum themes here over the next day or so. Probably after the show, I'll probably start working on a couple of them because I have to do like all the thumbnails and everything here. And yes, a lot of times the thumbnails leads us to our theme here. So if it's like, oh yeah, no, but I already did that, didn't I? Hold on. The reason, and that just came to my memory here only because of one thing and one thing only here. On our last comic book spec, no, was it comic book spec? Yeah, no, it was our last episode here for From the Desk of a Small Press Publisher. We was talking about Jake Rockwell and Centurion's Power Extreme. That would be something that we would have had as a thing for comic book spectrum to talk about, cartoon shows and stuff to that magnitude over there. But we were talking about, bad cartoon series back in the day, and we were talking about Ultra Force, and we were talking about the toys and stuff that went along with some of the cartoon series, and we got to Centurion's Power Extreme, and everybody was talking about Ace McCloud. It's like, yeah, Ace McCloud's that. It's like, yeah, nobody could beat my boy Jake Rockwell. It's like, who's, and everybody like, who is Jake Rockwell? It's like, how do you not know who Jake Rockwell is? It was only in the very beginning, it was only 3 Centurions on the team here. It was Ace McCloud, Max Ray, and Jake Rockwell. And then there was 2 others that came along in the cartoon series, and that's outside of Crystal, who was always at their satellite base in space. Crystal always stayed in the satellite base. I don't think she ever put on a actual Centurion student that came to Earth. But anyway, I explained all that stuff to during that time here about why Jake was the man back in the day. So what I'm actually looking at now here is like all the things here that we talked about. Yeah, we had Gotcha Man, we had Defenders of the Earth, we had Mummies Alive. Yeah, we did a Centurions already. So yeah, we're not going to go ahead and revisit that. We did Centurions back, a couple episodes back here. But that's one of the things that came up here. But since nobody else have anything else to say here, I'm going to bid you guys adieu. You guys, those on the East Coast, you're going to have at least 30 more minutes of your Saturday out there. Hope you enjoy it. For those elsewhere, I'm giving you the rest of your Saturday back here. Thank you for watching. As I always say, live life, grow, and be well. And next week, I'm not certain what's going to happen here. It really depends on how much work I get done between now and then. Because like I said, I'm on page 4, issue number 6. You never know when I'm going to start drawing Amazonia 8. So if I start really putting work in Amazonia 8, you guys know how I draw. If I start work on it, it's going to be like boom, 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 boom. And then eventually I have to dust off this scanner here and start scanning pages and digitally ink the issues and everything here. And I'm still keeping my word. we won't be doing anything drawing related or rendering related on the show here, because remember back in the day, back when I was doing half and half, it seems like people dropped off on that second half when I was doing like the inking and the 3D rendering and everything, because you felt that I wasn't paying enough attention to you. But until then, until next week, until I figure out what we're going to talk about and everything here, this life grow and be well. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and we are out of here. Bye.